Assam Urban Development Minister Ashok Singhal shook hands with the Home Minister of Mizoram, Lalcham Liana. And it seemed that curtains had come down on another round of border friction between the two northeastern neighbours. A long-standing dispute over borders just days ago had left 6 dead and more than 40 injured. It had seen an economic blockade by one state against another, and also a travel advisory being issued by Assam against visiting Mizoram. At the meeting held in Aizawl, high-powered representatives of the two states reached an amicable agreement, according to which both would withdraw forces from all disputed border areas. The dialogue came after several telephonic discussions had taken place between the chief ministers of both states, between Mizoram Chief Minister Zoramthanga and Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma. After the meet, Assam withdrew its travel advisory, and the ministers of both states said there will be more discussions at a higher level to draw a permanent solution to the border dispute issue. For now, matters have calmed down. But just days ago, when India Today was at the line of disagreement, it was an angry border that separated Assam from Mizoram.
Hello and welcome. You're watching India Today. I'm Ashutosh Mishra. In independent India's history, first time two states stood at border dispute and fired at each other. Both Assam and Mizoram claims innocence and provocation from the other side. But caught in the crossfire are the people who lived side by side for years and now waiting for peace to return. Over the next 30 minutes, we dissect the Assam-Mizoram border dispute. But first, let's look at what happened on July 26th. India Today is the only channel has reached here at ground zero, and this is Mizoram says it's their territory, Assam says it is their territory. Now what has started in those images, you have seen how a bus was vandalized. Behind that there are two more vehicles which are completely burned down.
It all started around 11:30 a.m. on 26th of July. Mizoram claims that some 200 Assam police personnel came to the Vairangte auto rickshaw stand and forcibly closed the duty post of the Central Reserve Police Force and a section of Mizoram police personnel.
My personnel are not the one who started firing. This person is the one who started firing. The person, Assam police, who is with the LMG here at this post. I seek shelter in the protection at CRPF camp.
Did you seek help from them?
No, I seek help from them, but they refused.
बैठ करके अचानक वो लोग चले गए, हम लोग इधर बैठे थे, तब अचानक फायर ऊपर से आया, तो हम लोग का कुछ आदमी इंजर्ड हो गए।
जो फायर था, आप पुलिस वाले आप पहचान सकते हो, वो किस तरह का वेपन था? मतलब नॉर्मल राइफल से फायर आ रहा था, मशीन गन थी, लाइट मशीन गन थी, क्या था वो, कैसा फायर था?
वो तो नॉर्मल राइफल नहीं था, वो तो एलएमजी था, एमएमजी एलएमजी ऐसा शायद था, क्योंकि नॉन स्टॉप फायर हुआ, हम लोग उठ भी नहीं पाए।
नॉन स्टॉप फायर?
नॉन स्टॉप फायर हो रहा था।
कितनी मशीन चल रही थी लगभग एक साथ में?
एक साथ में तो दो पहाड़ से आ रहे थे गुल्ली का बरसात हो रहा था। अगर हम लोग का अफसर ने तो नहीं फायर करने के लिए मना कर दिया कि आप फायर मत करो, आप लोग ऐसा बोला। हम लोग फायर,
लोगों ने जवाबी गोली नहीं चलाई।
हम जवाब कैसे चलाते सर, वो लोग भी हम लोग का एक ही देश के, हम लोग चला नहीं सकते ना उसके ऊपर।
The CRPF had been deployed as a neutral force at disputed stretches along the 164.6 kilometer Assam-Mizoram border. But no one could prevent the vandalism of vehicles and firing that resulted in the death of 6 Assam police personnel and 1 civilian.
We just received more than 50 numbers of police personnel, plus another civilians also were there. So ultimately 48 was being admitted, policemen was being admitted here, and those who were having the major injuries, some of them were airlifted to Guwahati and SP Kachar was airlifted to Mumbai accordingly.
इधर तो फायर इधर ही हुआ था बॉर्डर पर, तो उसके बाद हमारा गांव पे भी जाके गुल्ली गिरा है, हमारा गांव पे भी 2 गुल्ली गिरा है। यहाँ का जो पब्लिक है सब भाग के इधर उधर चला गया, पब्लिक डर के मारे सब लोग भाग गया।
Mizoram Chief Minister Zoramthanga claimed Assam police used light machine guns in the clashes, injuring 2 men from Mizoram.
While speaking to India Today, the Mizoram Chief Minister Zoramthanga here at his residence. I'm here in Mizoram, in Aizawl, right outside his residence, and while speaking to me, he did say that it is time for the centre to intervene. However, he also said that during the Shillong meeting on 24th, despite the meeting that we agreed to solve the crisis, the border dispute between 2 states amicably, on 24th July, the Assam police personnel, the armed police personnel did enter in the territory and captured the police outpost of Mizoram, and that led to this entire brawl that also resulted in injuring 2 personnels from the Mizoram side. 6 policemen and a civilian died, several other injured from Assam side in July 26th clash. The border villages in Assam is tensed. The people have imposed blockade on goods and traffic movement. The Assam government has issued a travel warning for its people because it believes and it claims that it was the Mizos who provoked the deadly clash.
The Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, announced 3 days of state mourning over the deaths of state policemen. His government claims that the violent 26 July incident took place because Assam was cracking down on interstate drug smuggling and illegal cattle trade.
916 से ज़्यादा केसेस रजिस्टर हुए हैं ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग के, 1500 से ज़्यादा लोग अरेस्ट हुए हैं, 20 केजी से ज़्यादा हीरोइन पकड़ी गई है, एंड दिस इज जस्ट अ टिप ऑन द आइसबर्ग। क्या हम देश को नशा मुक्त करना चाहते हैं? करना चाहते हैं तो कठोर स्टेप्स लेना पड़ेगा आपको।
People at Lailapur village are scared. They are fearful of another recurrence of violence, of another firing attack, because this village on the national highway has been caught in the crossfire for decades now.
डर तो लगेगा सर, अभी यदि बाई चांस फिर गुल्ली शुरू होगा तो फिर भी हम लोग को भागना पड़ेगा यहाँ से। कभी सोते हैं एक आँख से सोते हैं, एक आँख से जागते रहते हैं कहीं गोलाबारी आ जाए।
When the fighting started, they all left this village and still under the dilemma and a sense of fear that what would happen next any time. And remember, this is happening between 2 states, not at the border of 2 countries.
12 families from the villages reportedly fled their homes on 26th of July, seeking shelter away from the flashpoints. It is being said that it was then that the angry Assamese villagers decided to block the highway connecting Mizoram. The Assam government issued an advisory asking people from the state to avoid travel to Mizoram.
इतना फोर्स मोरा है, गाँव वाला आदमी भी मोरा है, तो हम लोग अभी ब्लॉकेट किया है, तो जब तक ये फैसला नहीं होगा तो हम ब्लॉकेट नहीं चढ़ेगा।
किस तरह का रोक पाबंदियां आप लगा रहे हैं लोगों के लिए? कौन लोग जा सकते हैं पार करके चेक पोस्ट, कौन नहीं जा सकता?
कोई नहीं जाना सकता है उधर का, कोई पब्लिक जाने से उधर में रिस्क है।
The government of Mizoram filed an FIR on the 26th of July incident. It accused the Assam Chief Minister of criminal conspiracy and along with Himanta Biswa Sarma, 4 senior Assam police officials, 2 bureaucrats and 200 unidentified Assam police personnel were named in the FIR.
I am very happy if filing a FIR against me can resolve the Assam-Mizoram border dispute. I am extremely happy. If police give me notice, I'll go and I'll join the investigation. If any notice is served to me, I'll go walking to Bhairangte. I'll start my Padajatra from Silchar and I'll reach Bhairangte. And I'll give my key, arrest me. If my arrest is going to resolve the dispute, Why not arrest me today itself?
Adding more fuel to the fire, a BJP MLA from Assam's Kachar district made a provocative statement.
যে সমস্ত সামগ্রী এই সমস্ত সামগ্রী যদি আমরা না পাঠাই তো মিজোরাম পুলিশ মিজোরাম সরকার মিজোরামের মানুষ না খেয়ে মরবে
With the BJP in government in Assam and BJP ally MNF in Mizoram, it fell on the BJP central leadership and the Prime Minister himself to douse the fire. 2 days after registering the FIR, Mizoram withdrew it.
And if you see in those images, that is the particular point, some around 500 meters from the place at the moment where I'm standing. And top of that, that's the one of the bunkers set up by Mizoram authorities, the IRB and also the Mizoram police. And that was where the police said in the statement that how the LMG was used to fire upon the Assam police officials. At the moment, the situation remains tense. And now since the center has handed over this entire area of conflict to the CRP, and from 500 meters, there are different companies and teams of the CRPF have been deployed here to ensure no one crosses this particular area. So neither any vehicles, nor the civilians, nor the media persons or anyone without the due approval are allowed to cross this point. Forget about this border areas alone. And similarly has been placed at Mizoram border, and that clearly now even risking a blockade-like situation, as neither the trucks are allowed to enter in the states nor any supplies are going to the Mizoram territory further. So now that also a threat of economic blockade to the state of Mizoram. And here the CRP is ensuring that there is no further conflict triggers between the two states, between the authorities of two states. In the meanwhile, certain orders have been issued from the Assam government. The Chief Minister has issued order not only for the people to be cautious, both who are living in Assam, traveling to Assam or living in this territory of Mizoram, and also crack down on the drugs trafficking by frisking any vehicles that is entering from Mizoram to Assam.
Mizoram, on the other hand, claims that the Assam police provoked and they only reacted to threats. Mizoram government even filed an FIR naming Assam Chief Minister Hemanta Biswa Sarma and IG of Assam Police, but they withdrew it later. Now, Mizo people are agitated and suffering from the blockade imposed by Assam, calling it historically unjustified and also from the humanitarian point of view.
Mizoram accuses Assam of snatching their farmlands.
Anron sa hi ka ejon ve na ber ania Assam sarkar hianin tuna hianin mindua sak mek ani harsat na kato na chuchu ni
Mizo officials claim that this action by Assam triggered the 26th July clash. Mizoram Chief Minister Zoramthanga even accused the Assam police of firing light machine guns during the clash.
No, it was started from them. Because fully, number one, if you are going to capture another armed force post, it is clear that they will not simply surrender and give up. They will strive. Knowing this all along, they capture the post and the other try to retake it. But the point is that in order to do that, we sent our SP to negotiate. And while the negotiation is going on, and inside the capital came, well, our SP was still there. Firing started. Firing started because the local people there shouting and complained that some police people, what you did is wrong. And there was shouting and counter-shouting. Later on, some policemen used the tear gas, more than 40 of them. And our policemen, they did not have a tear gas. Later on, from the nearby, they took a few tear gas, and they throw only 3 of them. And when they throw these 3 of them, some police people started firing. And then the firing started. It was all started by the Assam side.
After Mizoram lodged an FIR against Assam, political pressure began to mount on the state government. And within 24 hours, Mizoram had started showing signs of retreat.
I will have a discussion with the concerned police officers who are filing that FIR, and if there is no legal hitch in that, we would like to remove the name of the Honorable Chief Minister of Assam.
In the meantime, the blockade imposed by Assam for movement of supplies to Mizoram began to impact daily life in the state. Fuel supplies was the first to be hit, as stocks in different parts of Mizoram began to dwindle.
This is one and only bridge which connects North Tripura to state of Mizoram, and through this narrow passage, the petroleum tankers, the oil tankers and also the essential supplies are being ensured smoothly. Clearly the situation is still under tension.
Their village panchayat leaders, and this is the recommendations which they have written down. So they will make an application, written application to them, and then the village panchayats will see the validity of.
And how much fuel you are providing to each vehicle?
It depends. On two-wheelers, we are giving them 3 liters. On medium vehicles, we are giving them maximum 10 liters, but mostly 5 liters.
To mitigate the situation, the state government began looking for alternate routes to bring in supplies. Truck routes began to be diverted through Manipur and Tripura, the other 2 states bordering Mizoram.
यहाँ पे ऑन एन एवरेज इतनी व्हीकल्स नहीं जाती थी, हेवी व्हीकल्स नहीं जाती थी. अभी मतलब जो ट्रेडर्स है फॉर व्हाटएवर रीजंस दे आर प्रेफरिंग दिस रूट.
ये हमारा सेफ्टी के लिए लगा रहा हूँ. आगे 3 किलोमीटर पहले एक ये लगाया बैरिकेड लगाया हुआ है, ये पब्लिक की तरफ से लगाया है कि हम लोग असम का 6 जवान शहीद हो गया, उसके साथ एक सिविलियन एक शहीद हो गया. ये ऐसा मतलब ऐसा लग रहा है कि यहाँ पे उन लोगों का जो एक्टिविटी है वो कभी भी मतलब हम लोगों को वार कर सकता है, ऐसा एक्टिविटी लगता है.
In 1960, a very peculiar cyclical phenomena happened in the Lushai Hills, which happens every 40 to 50 years in areas like Tripura and Mizoram. That's called the bamboo flowering. What the bamboo flowering did was it proliferated rats. What rats did was ate up all the cultivation, and there was a famine. Because of the famine, people were dying of starvation. The Lushai Hills reached out to Assam saying that, please send us rice or food grain. And Assam ignored. A Mizo National Famine Front was created, MNFF. Later, the word famine was dropped and it became one of the fiercest guerrilla outfits ever. And in 1966, a terrible thing happened. They declared independence, and Indira Gandhi's government sent the Indian Air Force out there, and Aizawl, the capital city, was airstruck. That is the only example of independent India of air bombing your own people. Now the scars have not healed.
The Zoramthanga government withdrew the FIR after the central government stepped in to calm things down.
The entire dispute is around 1318 square kilometer of in Kachar district of Assam side and Kolasib district on Mizoram side. It runs parallel through the highway number 306, which connects not only Assam but rest part of the mainland to Mizoram's capital, Aizawl. And this dispute did not develop overnight, but it has its deep roots way back tracing in 19th century British colonial rule.
The 7 sisters of the Northeast have a history of squabbling over property. Nothing unusual about that. It is human nature. When a bit of politics and a dash of emotion gets added to the cauldron that witches brew, the fallout can begin at mischief and end in murder.
Well, I think, it wouldn't be very fair to put everything to the colonial baggage because, we've been around for 75 years and we have not been able to demarcate borders with our neighboring countries and also with interstate borders. And remember, all these various states of what we call Northeast were part of Assam. It was Assam and it was Nepal, the Northeastern Frontier Province, which is today's Arunachal Pradesh. And Nagaland and Mizoram, Meghalaya, all these were carved out of Assam, and there have been issues along the border, which is purely territorial and logistic.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny.
In the beginning, long years before India had its tryst with destiny, there were only 3 sisters, as administratively defined to suit the convenience of the colonial masters. There was Assam, occupied by the British in mid-19th century. There was princely Tripura, that became a British protectorate in the early 1800s. And there was the Kingdom of Manipur, in subsidiary alliance with British India since 1824. In time, the 4 remaining sisters came into being in fits and bursts. The Northeast Frontier Agency, that was to become Arunachal Pradesh, along with Meghalaya, Nagaland and Mizoram, were carved out of Greater Assam. And the cauldron was ready to brew suspicion and mistrust. Assam today has border disputes with 4 of its 6 sisters, with Arunachal Pradesh, with Nagaland, with Meghalaya, and with Mizoram.
The reason why 1875 inner line was acceptable to the Mizo is that it was drawn with the approval of some chief. Still then, there are some, the Mizo territory has been encroached by the British with their commercial vested interests. But still, I should say that the people of Mizoram today believe that it is acceptable on the conditions that it was demarcated or the inner line was drawn. Kachar inner line 1875 was drawn with the acceptance of some chief of the Mizos. The reason why 1933 was not accepted is that during that time, first, the Mizo chief were not consulted. Second, a large chunk of inner line reserve forest was excluded from the Lusai Hill district.
It is the first thing, of course, is that there are 2 agreements, and then Mizoram follows the 1875 demarcation of the Lusai Hills and Kachar. That is actually part of the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act of 1873 called the BEFR. And Assam follows another act of 1933 demarcating Lusai Hills and Manipur. And since the 2 states haven't been able to come to an agreement, they have agreed to disagree and maintain status quo. And there is a no man's land. And allegedly, there have been encroachment on the no man's land. And that is probably the trigger for the immediate trigger of the violence, first in 2018, then in 2020, actually last October, while the pandemic was raging, there was enough violence out there, but only civilians were involved, and that is why it did not hit the headlines.
The Assam and Mizoram border dispute till now had been less volatile than those that Assam has with Nagaland and Meghalaya. Mizoram was carved out of Assam as a union territory in 1972 and later became a state in 1987. Small clashes had been taking place along the border of the Assam districts of Kachar, Hailakandi and Karimganj. A meeting between the officials of Assam and Mizoram held in 2014 resulted in an agreement to maintain status quo along the border of Assam and Mizoram. But first in 2018 and then again in 2020, there were major clashes, forcing Delhi to intervene. Central forces were deployed along the 164.6 kilometer shared border.
With regard to the CRPF handling the situation, I should say that they are largely responsible for the present incident also, because if they stopped the Assam police and the officials to enter Mizoram via the outskirts, the story would have been different. But the CRP personnel who are stationed there were not brave enough to stop the Assam police.
The northeastern states have a history of squabbling over what historically belonged to whom. Until the centre or the courts come up with acceptable solutions, such clashes over where the border should be will never let a line be drawn that says, dispute ends here.
New Delhi is trying to broker a peace between two squabbling neighbors, but here at ground zero is the people who are stuck in this hatred over whom does this land belong to. We will keep track all the developments here. It's time for a short commercial break. Keep watching India Today for all the news and updates. This is Ashutosh Mishra. Goodbye.